needs to go into the applications. Oh, there we go. We have got Brian with us, who will take over from me halfway through this presentations. Both myself and Brian are senior advisors at East Midlands RDS. We may have Sarah Brian joining us from South Central RDS as well. So both Sarah and Brian are on one of the pre-doc panels, so have insights as well to be able to offer to you. So Louise is running my slides for me so that we know that we've got connectivity problems that won't happen. So Louise, I'm going to have to say next slide, please. I'm going to do a Chris Whitty on you. So this is, and I'm going to ask you to click again straight away if you can for me, because that should make everything animate. Oh no, that's gone too far. Oh, it's not going to animate on yours. Okay, so these are the, can you take it back one? Sorry. Thank you. So this is the overview of the different pathway schemes that the NIHR offer for fellowships. We're going to concentrate on 4 of these. So if Louise, you just click on for me now, just one. So there we go. So these are the ones highlighted with the little wheels round them. So we'll look at the fellowships for all, pre-doctoral fellowship, the healthcare professional, the ICA scheme, so the pre-clinical academic fellowship, the in-practice fellowship, which is open for doctors and dentists, and the local authority social care one, which is new scheme that's come out recently. So thank you, Louise. So the pre-doctoral clinical academic fellowship provides master's level training. So we're looking at, there's 2 different schemes to this. There's both the Bridge and the Standard. So as you can see, one will fund a programme of academic training at master's level, whereas the Bridge gives you a small amount of funding for master's level training. So these really are to look at thinking about, if you haven't already got a master's, you'll be applying for the full programme, whereas if you've already got a master's in applied health or in research methods that are around applied health, then you can look at building on specific methodology within it. You've got to hold full registration with an eligible regulated body. The link is there, it takes you onto the NIHR webpage, but it tends to be things like the Nursing and Midwifery Council, the Allied Health Professional Council. So there's a big list of there, and it does cover a lot, and it will cover things like the GMC, but it's for non-medics that sit within the register. So I'll go and check out that to see if you're eligible to go on there. They are saying you must have greater or the same as 1 year's experience of practice in the health or care profession for the registration which you hold. So if you've recently changed from one to the other, then you've got to have at least a year within that one that you're currently within. And you must hold a contract with a provider of health or social care services. It doesn't have to be necessarily the NHS, just as long as it's a provider of health. So we do see like the private healthcare systems as well, just depending on sort of what offer they will give, you know, whether how much is free at the point of service. So it must provide at least 50% of its services free at the point of delivery. And you must be spending at least 50% of your current role delivering health or social care services that are free at the point of delivery. So the guidelines on the website are quite useful, and it does unpick. But if you have any questions about any of the schemes as you're going along, the programme managers of the schemes are happy to receive emails to actually, you know, if you've got a query, they should be able to answer if we can't within like the RDS service or the other infrastructure that sits around it. You must not have registered for or completed a PhD in a relevant subject area. So these are very much master's level training that's moving towards the PhD level. The pre-doctorals sit along that pathway, and so the Academy are looking for people that will go on to develop clinical academic careers or academic careers that can improve health, and this is a master's level part of that pathway. What we do say, well, what the Academy says as well, is that if you've had more than, you can only have 2 attempts at any of the pre-doctoral schemes, but if you get to the point of where it's deemed fundable but they can't fund it because they don't have enough money, and that does happen quite regularly across the different schemes, then that doesn't count towards your strikes. So, you know, if it comes back with it saying that, I'm sorry, we're not been able to fund you on this occasion, but you will have a fundable application, that doesn't count to your 2 strikes. Next slide, please, Louise. So this is the funding amount available for the PCAF. It will cover your salary costs, so that is generous. Up to £5,000 master's level training. A lot of people will ask for something like an MRes, which we know will be more than 5,000, as long as you can justify why you need to do that and not just separate modules within it, then you can ask for that. Again, it's in this mass pool of funding that they've got is how many they'll be able to support within that. So you might find that it just tips you out of being funded, but if you feel that is the best way to go, then don't let it stop you. Up to £1,000 conference fees are available, and up to £1,000 supervision and mentorship fees. So the duration award can be taken at different, however it would fit into your working life, as because they wanting you to stay clinical as well as doing these awards. So you can take it 12 months full time, or 24 months at 2.5 days a week, or 30 months at 2 days a week. The way you justify taking it over a longer period of time is that you're building your clinical side as well as your academic side. But some people just take that 12 months out to get it done. Next slide, please. So with the PCAF Bridge, which is looking at a small amount of academic training at master's level, we're talking about building on what you've already got. They will still cover your salary costs, but the fee, the money available for the courses, the conference fees and the supervision is a lot lower, mainly because they're just expecting you to be taking separate modules, or perhaps attending a conference, or actually working on your doctoral fellowship application within that time. So it's buying out your time to be able to spend on writing your doctoral fellowship. The duration award is 6 months full time, or 12 months at 2 days a week. So it's a lot less time available, but actually it is really designed to buy your time out to be able to develop a further application to the DRF schemes. Next slide, please. So this one is the pre-doctoral fellowship for all, although myself and Brian were talking earlier, it really isn't for all, because it's designed specifically to support aspiring research methodologists. So if you're looking specifically at developing into a med stats person that will just sit alongside the big trials, or you're wanting to develop into health economics, clinical trial design, qualitative research, so it's very much more of an academic model. So this is really about developing yourself as applied health researcher, but in a specific methodology. You must be within either a HEI, or so a higher educational institute, an NIHR body, or other health and care provider, and a completion of a relevant first degree. So this fellowship is not open to clinical applicants looking to undertake training in research methods. You would use either, well, you would use the pre-doctoral, the PCAF, if you're working within the applied health, so allied health practitioners. You'd use the in-practice fellowship, although that's GPs and community dentists. You would use what we would is known as the academic clinical fellowships, which are training posts if you're working within a trust as a medical doctor, or you would use the PLAF, which is the local authority pre-doctoral if you're working in social care. So this is very much about developing methodologists. Next slide, please. As you can see, it's very much the same as the other pre-doctoral we're talking about. You can have £5,000 for training, and they will do that for £5,000 for master's fees as well, £1,000 for conference fees, and £1,000 for supervision and mentorship. You can take it between 50 and 100% whole time equivalent. It's a strange system apparently on the when you put it in, because it's all electronically calculated. So you actually put in how many months, how many number of 100% whole time equivalent months you think you need to complete this fellowship, and then it will calculate it out into the equivalent. So 18 months of 50% whole time equivalent equals a 30-60 month duration. Now it seems a really strange way of doing it, but that's unfortunately how the system runs. Next slide, please. So this is the pre-doctoral local authority fellowship, so PLAF, and it runs very similar to the PCAF, which is the clinical academic one, because it has a bridge scheme as well, and it has exactly the same type of funding. Eligibility is slightly different. So you're looking at applicants who are working within local authorities or provider of local authority commissioned services, or non-profit organisations such as a charity. But you need to be working within that and aim to stay within that while you're doing it. So applicants must be intending to continue to work in their current sector over the course of the PLAF, or through continuation of their current role outside of the award time. So this is where you might want to take it as a part-time to be able to, you know, buy out some of your time using your your pre-doctoral and continue perhaps 2 days a week working as you would do normally. It's always a bit difficult at the moment, isn't it, to actually buy out time because there's nobody there necessarily to backfill your post. And sometimes it's easier just to go, I'm going to go full time over this amount of time, and it allows, you know, that post to be backfilled easier than if it's a part-time post. So it's worth having that conversation, because you're going to have conversations with your line managers and the people that will be supporting you to be able to do this, and, you know, working with them to see which is the best way to go. Next slide, please. So as I said, very similar, in fact it's the same funding available as it would be for the pre-clinical academic fellowship, doctoral fellowship, pre-doc. So, you know, you've got £5,000 there for your master's level training, £1,000 for conference fees, £1,000 for supervision and mentorship, and all of your salary costs. And that's an idea of how you could take the duration of the award. But again, as we said, talk with the people that, you know, your line managers and your managers, to be able to work out which is the best way perhaps for you to be able to take this. Next slide, please. Ooh. That's the bridge. So very exactly the same as the PCAF Bridge. It's less money, but it's there to buy out a small amount of academic training at master's level. It's there to support you putting in for the pre-doctoral local authority, doctoral fellowship, or you can actually go into any of the doctoral fellowship schemes. You don't have to, it doesn't automatically mean that you've got to go down a set route, but they're very much there to give you the extra money and salary costs bought out to be able to provide you with the time to develop applications moving forwards. Thank you, Louise. So the in-practice fellowships, we'll just touch on these briefly, because this is a pre-doctoral scheme open to GPs and community dentists. You mustn't have registered or completed a PhD in a relevant subject. I mean, it doesn't mean to say you couldn't have done something in applied physics and you're going to do it in applied health now. But why? You must be sucker for punishment if you want to do 2 PhDs, because it was hard enough doing 1. But, you know, this is really to buy out time to be able to do master's level training to work towards doing your PhD in the future. And how you do that route, it might be through the NIHR, or it might be through any of the big, you know, UKRI funders, or it could be you're looking at a charity one. So it just gives you salary, gives you 50% of the applicant's salary in this case. But your remaining 50% must be covered by your continued clinical commitment. You have up to £4,500 towards training and development, and £1,000 bursary for conference meetings, travel, etc. This does not include or pay for any research costs or full economic costings, but with this, you're really looking at building up your master's level training. So we wouldn't necessarily expect a huge amount of research costs within those anyway. Thank you, Louise. So you can take it for a maximum of 2 years or whole-time part-time, and your time must be divided 50% clinical, 50% academic training. If you're not gaining satisfactory progress after the first year, you won't get your second year of funding. So it's perhaps a bit more monitored maybe than the other pre-doctoral schemes, but I think that's to make sure that the actual clinical time is not taking over your academic training part of it. So you want to be able to show that you're in a position to apply for a PhD. This is the same with all of them. It is really a pathway, and they're wanting, you know, to support people throughout the lifetime of their training. So this is just one step along that process. Next slide, please. I think I pass over to Brian now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, so I'm going to move on and talk about what each of the panels, each of the pre-docs require in terms of the application, what they like to see. But first of all, just to kind of set the scene, we deal a lot at RDS, talking to people who wish to go for NIHR fellowships. And we have these, what we describe as the 4 Ps: the person, the project, the place, and patient and public involvement. Now, in regards to the pre-doc, we can actually, when you think about the project, there's no requirement in the sense to have a research project, although there is, and I'll talk about that in a minute, ideas of a research topic and area. But we are in the pre-doc really talking about the person and the place, and that includes supervision and the organisation. And again, I'll talk more about the patient and public involvement and offer up some hints and tips in regards to the application, how one might actually introduce this notion of patient and public involvement. Next slide, please. So as Richard went through each of the individual pre-docs, I likewise am going to go through and them separately and talking about what funding panels are looking for. As Rachel demonstrated, there are a lot of crossover in terms of these panels. I guess it's talking about you know a certain level of academic and clinical excellence that they require in regards to the applications, albeit at the pre-doc level. So let's start with the PCAF. And this first one is, you know, what we're looking for is a suitability of applicant for a clinical academic career. And I should add, as Rachel mentioned, I'm a member of the actual national panel for the PCAF. So my experience is about what I do as a reviewer of that, and also as I sit in the panel and offer up those kind of advice. And there is a big evidence on, you know, the suitability in terms of having certain academic abilities, but it's also this evidence in leadership, which is really important. You're forging ahead as a clinical academic into a new area, and it's about not only yourself, but in future you will be bringing forward other people, showing a level of leadership within your particular research area. So they do look for that within the application, you know, evidence that the, you know, applicants may have spearheaded some kind of training within their clinical environment, stuff like that, or gone ahead with a particular, you know, development of the intervention, clinical intervention. So those kind of leadership, it's not kind of management leadership, but just evidence of that leadership is there and people are thinking through that. And it's also about the appropriateness of the award to the expertise and trajectory of the candidate. I should say, you know, these awards, as a panel member, I've noticed over the last few years that there's a kind of an inflation going on. So be mindful of that. They're really competitive, and you have to kind of, you know, where it says, you know, people with less research background. But understand when you put an application on, you are in competition with people who may have, you know, different levels of research experience, and that shines through in their application. So it's appropriateness of the award for where the people are at this moment in time, but there is a certain kind of career inflation, but they don't expect a training program, but sorry, a research activity, but some people put that in and they judge it on that. Just be mindful of that. Most definitely, the quality of the training package that you put into your application is important in terms of judgment from the panel. So be mindful of that. Again, another strong point is the strong academic environment that the university, the higher education institute, has experience of undertaking and helping people through these clinical pathway careers that they, you know, supervisors have had previous experience themselves, and that there's an infrastructure, a training infrastructure, you know, they've had NIHR money in terms of fellowships previously, so they know what they're dealing with when fellowships come to them and ask for their for them to host their pre-doc. There's also an important aspect is the appropriateness of academic supervision and mentorship. And again, it's about demonstrating in your application that your chosen supervisor has actually experience of doctoral students, particularly NIHR doctoral students. That's important. And, you know, it's a big tick if you can say that, you know, they have actually taken people from pre-doc through that into PhD. The other thing I want to mention here is the supervision and mentor divisions. some people kind of mix this up in their applications. As a panel member, I've seen where the supervision should be around perhaps two aspects. One is methodology that you perhaps are looking into in regards to formulating your PhD proposal. That's important. It might also be the clinical area and supervision. But people seem to mix up this idea of what the mentorship is, and it's not about that academic clinical supervision methodology. It's about finding someone who is further along in the stages of where you want to be, who are a clinical or developing clinical academic, and you can speak to them. You can, they can offer you advice and support on how they got to where they are, and how you might actually, plan your career development with an understanding of your peers and mentorship, how they got to where they are. So there is a division between that supervision and mentorship, and be aware of that within the application. This is another important thing, arrangement of ensuring protected time, and I've mentioned it from the clinical host. I have come across applications in the panel where everything is hunky-dory in terms of supervision, mentorship, the chosen research area, etc. All things seems great. They seem like excellent candidate, but there's no evidence that the host, the clinical host, or in the local authority host, there's no clear evidence that they will be released to do the pre-doc study, and that really is important. They want to see clear, almost contractual obligation in regards to that in the application. Next slide, please, Louise. So this is the pre-doc, the methodologist. So again, it's about inspiring methodologies, motivated to work within the NHS. It's also within the application, providing evidence to demonstrate this. Now, as you're entering, as it were, a newbie within the area, it might be you rely on any prior studies you've done, master's dissertations, etc., projects, perhaps research teams you've had the opportunity to engage with. So anything that suggests that you're heading and have an interest in social care research as a methodologist is important to the application. Training development tailored to your needs. It's comprehensive. It covers what you need in regards to planning the PhD. You also demonstrate a clear pathway through the pre-doc, and then which shows you that where you're taking up the training at what points in time within the pre-doc that's suitable for that application, that PhD application development. Again, the host and supervisors need to describe how they will support you in your career in the long term, and that they have done this with previous applicants. And that's back to that, can the host organisation supervision evidence that infrastructure which will support you as an individual moving through the scheme. Expertise and experience, I mentioned before, but supervisors must have the expertise in the methodology you're proposing. And they also know, this is again a demand of the application, that they do include how many current students they have at pre-doc and doctoral levels in terms of who they are supervising. These are important for the panel to judge if these are fit and suitable supervisors to take you through the award. Could we move on, please, Louise? I've got a message there. What slides will be available, I believe. All right, I call this the PLAF. This is a local authority one. Again, like the PCAF, it's about a good quality training and development package. The important thing that they mentioned, it's also true of the clinical side with the PCAF, but this idea that, what your academic interests should be relevant to and provide benefit to the local authority. I should mention this, when we talk about wider NIHR programs and project funding, it's all about patient benefit. It matters even at this level that your trajectory is towards patient benefit. You may have a rounded idea about what you might be researching, but nevertheless, the panel will judge on it to see, in the long run, is there patient benefit within your research commitments in regards to PhD and beyond. And that, again, that question of local authorities offering up and providing clear arrangements to ensure that you have protected time. And Rachel mentioned this idea of backfill. That should be within the host organisation letter. It's clear commitment that you will be released, you will have this time, and there will be offered opportunities for employment for someone else while you're undertaking the course, the fellowship. Appropriateness of the proposed academic environment, and again, it's the same as the PCAF. Is the environment right for you in order to undertake? You've chosen an environment, chosen higher education, suitable for you to undertake the pre-doctoral award. And again, that's about training opportunities, student infrastructure, possibly the opportunity to sit within an experienced research team while you go through the pre-doctoral. This is what they're looking for in regards to the panel. Primary academic supervisor for the fellowship, again, someone who has the right research experience and methodology. And again, that notion of a separate career mentor. It's interesting in the PLAF, these are new awards just recently set up in the last year. So a lot of that kind of groundwork about building those networks, building those relationships betwixt local authorities and higher education institutions, in some respects have to be done by the candidate themselves, you as potential applicants. There's a lot of footwork involved in this application. There's a paper side of it, drawing up that, but there's also a lot of kind of knocking on doors and talking to people, building up networks which will help you engage. Evidence of interest in research and leadership, yes. It may not be the case that as a local authority worker, you might not have had much experience of research and nor leadership, but you have to find with yourself and put down in the application what might be an opportunity to display those notions of research and leadership. And that might be, you might have conducted a service audit or undertaken evaluation and an intervention within the local authority, within your workplace. Anything that can demonstrate that notion of leadership and that you're interested in research questions, in proposing research questions and carrying out small amounts of research, that can help your application, and they look for that activity in terms of people's previous experience. An important aspect of the application, again, this applies to all of them, but is this idea of a plan of future research running through the fellowship, the PLAF fellowship, and onto the doctoral application. People take the pre-doctoral application as a kind of training opportunity in itself, and it's a training opportunity, but it's also about developing oneself. One is talking about what they're doing now in terms of training and development, but it's also this idea of within the application, always be projecting into the future about where the training you're receiving now is seeing you in the future. And ultimately, in terms of the pre-doc, at the end of that, is that your development training is towards this fellowship application. Really important. Next, please. Okay, this is the in practice fellowships. We don't deal much with these at RDS. We don't see a lot of them, so I've drawn this from the guidelines on the NIHR web page. And it's about quality of academic training, provision of a strong academic environment, suitability and commitment of the applicant to a career as a clinical academic. Again, it's about the importance of supervisors and the correct methodologies to inform the student, the fellow and their application. It's also about ensuring protected time for the applicant, and a demonstrable track record of the host academic department in training clinicians to go forward in terms of their academic development and career. And back to that benefit for patient, at the heart of NIHR, it's also about the value of money as a research training award for the individual. Is it giving the NHS, NIHR value for money to train this individual? for now and indeed into the future as clinical academics. Next, please. Okay, so I've got 3 slides, remaining 3 slides on some tips and hints, and these come from my experience of being part of the panel. First and foremost, the pre-docs are a training program. The fellowships have that emphasis on training and development. And that's important, though I'll mention something about projects within that in a minute. It's also important in terms of the application when looking at the training package that any training you're doing in terms of methodology aligns with the PhD proposal in terms of specific training methods that I've got in their implementation science. We have seen where people may have done a master's prior to the application and had an introduction to qualitative research methods, and then they repeat that again within the actual application for the pre-doc. Now the panel can jump on that and say, why aren't they moving on in terms of development? Why did they go back to do another training program? And then you should be aware, be aware of that. You should be thinking through in terms of the research proposal you're planning for the PhD. What methods, what specific methods, specialist methods do I need in order to inform the proposal? Similarly, we've seen people who have actually kind of nominated to training in health economics, but yet the proposal or the suggested proposal or research topic gives an inclination towards health economics. So it's about finding the right training which will bolster and support the development of the proposal. The other thing here is if one gets one of these fellowships, the training package is good in terms of the money that it offers, and it is recommended that you choose the best national training that you can. There are some centres of excellence for particular methods training that you should choose and go for. Try not to pick the most convenient and the most local. It will be seen to be there's no ambition there. Go for the best. And it's also good to include clinical practice development training as part of that training package. It's just in order to show that you're keeping up with your clinical expertise, and that development is also enhancing your PhD proposal or your future PhD proposal. Provide a clear plan of the research topic for the PhD. Now, this is another important thing. There's not expected, because this is what the pre-fellowship is all about, training and all for you to develop a research question which will go ahead towards your PhD proposal. But there should be some idea of a research topic, and it should be aligned with where you are in terms of your clinical local authority experience as a clinician or practitioner. In the bridging, there is an expectation that there will be something, getting clearer and nearer to develop research question. So bear in mind that, given the time duration of the bridging program is shorter, so you're going in it expecting to be at a later stage in development. So a clear research question will shine through. Next slide, please, Louise. Although there's no specific recommendation for PPI engagement within the guidance note in the application, panels do like to see that people are making themselves aware of the importance of patient and public involvement within research moving forward. So in panels I've been part of, when it's come up that someone's actually using the time of the pre-doc to engage with the local PPI group, it seems to measure, gets a thumbs up from the PPI groups, and indeed just forms of engagement locally, which will always be informing the PhD application. Though not required, a small project, e.g. review, can help the application. Again, it's not required, and neither is the funding to do any research project per se as part of the pre-doc. But again, I've seen applications where people are doing things like they're doing a literature review, systematic review, something like that. Maybe even a small scale interview with colleagues, something that perhaps doesn't take on board the ethics committees, that sort of thing. Two things: it helps inform the PhD application because there's perhaps some things that they're wondering about, or some questions unanswered that they need to get their head around in terms of review, in order to inform that question. It's also seen as, if you're doing a training on, say, interview technique, I use as an example, I'm a qualitative researcher, but you might be doing training on interview techniques. The idea that you might run a small project where you are interviewing people, again, bolsters that training that you've had. There's no, as I say, there's no requirement to do a research project, but in terms of that kind of application inflation, increasingly we're seeing a lot of people actually doing small projects in order to inform their application. It's another thing that's blatant, do complete all the mandatory fields in the application. Some people miss that out and leave the panel bewildered in regards to what the applicants intend here. Don't leave panels to doubt about your prior experience in training and research topics of interest. That does happen, that people aren't clear. Be clear about what your interests are, where you're coming from, what your interests are. If you've got a research question or just an outline of a research question, then do kind of emphasize that. And that then will help inform what your training package would be and how you might actually describe that within the application. So don't leave panels in doubt in regards to your prior experience in training. I would recommend to use a research development framework, something like Beta research development framework. It's a nice way of encapsulating where you're at and what kind of training you need in terms of your proposal or future research. And again, panels like to think when they see it that people are being systematic about that. They've thought through their training, particularly if they've done that, thinking through it with the supervisor, and so describing that you've used the Vita development framework, is again a thumbs up in terms of the application. Keep referencing keep referencing in training and development to the PhD application. When you're writing and describing your training and development, always have in mind this will inform, have in mind and actually describe it. This will inform my PhD question. This will inform the methodology. This will inform that. Always have that kind of thread running through the application. Why are you doing training? Because I'm asking this question at a later time. So it really is important to keep that referencing back that your training and development is all about developing that PhD application. Okay, Louise. The next slide, sorry. I think my last page. There is a section, or at least there requires a section about publications, and I guess where people are in terms of experience and research career, that people may not actually have that. They are looking for peer-reviewed publications, and there's a section where you'd put that, demonstrate that. If you don't have, try and demonstrate that in other ways, in terms of your master's dissertation, maybe your master's dissertation is around the research in which you plan to go on to formulate your PhD question. It might again be about work-based audits and evaluations that you've written them up as a kind of working document for your local authority or clinical area. Put these in the background area. It's just some people have and panels. Some people have a string of publications already. It's just where you might be in terms of your career pathway, that you might have to rely on other demonstrations of as it were, long scale writing, which indeed the PhD is about. So put those things in. This is an important one. Ensure that organizational statements, from universities, local authorities, clinical areas, their statements are tailored to you. The support, demonstrate support and resources that it will offer you. But in particular, this is where you have to do the footwork. The people who are going to write these heads of department, whatever, try to get them to write something which is personal, that you are at the center of this application. We read applications where you think this is just a stock response. This is a letter that they've pulled out of a drawer somewhere and they've given it to you to put into your application. Trying to get them to write something where the panel can see that you are in the middle of this and that the support is around you. That's always an effective strategy in terms of the application and how the panel views things. I've said it before, but really start early building those relationships with supervisors and organisations, heads of department, people in local authorities on clinical areas. That's the footwork that you have to do in terms of getting people on your side, who will then write nice supervised, statements, referee reports, etc. for you. And then last two, and then do enthuse about your willingness to learn and to develop as a clinical academic or an academic practitioner in local authorities or a health methodologist. Don't sit back, don't be passive. And my last statement really is blow your trumpet, because if you ain't blowing it, someone else, some other application is. Put yourself at the center of application. And I say, don't be passive in describing your skills and experience. Put everything down that you think might actually impress the panel members. That's my hints and tips. Please, I think we've got a last slide and some key dates. Rachel, this is kind of standard, isn't it? This is your, year on year, they haven't changed.
So yeah, they're once a year, the pre-doctorals, unlike the doctoral and advanced fellowships, and they're all tending to come out in January at the moment, to close in March. So if that changes, we'll let people know if they need to, but I'd keep an eye on the websites, but this is what they're running to. They've standardized the process.
Okay, hopefully we'll have, Louise, are you there? Hopefully we'll have some questions.
We have got some questions.
All right, okay, and I think Louise is going to field those questions for us. Rachel, is Sarah